Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike big wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
Bored with your boring cardio? Stop pedaling that snooze cycle to Nowheresville and try some cardio that's actually fun. Supernatural Fitness, available on MetaQuest. Isn't that right, Jane Fonda?
Cardio will never be boring again.
Sweat to the beat of thousands of chart-topping songs inside stunning virtual landscapes.
Bet your stationary bike can't do that.
Visit GetSupernatural.com and join the next fitness revolution. Supernatural VR Fitness, only on MetaQuest. Rated T for Teen.
So, Jesse, how's Canada doing right now? What's the vibe?
I think it's a mixture of relief and apprehension and anxiety.
Jesse Brown is the head of the news site and podcast network, Canadaland. He's also the person I call up when Canada pops off in the news. So yesterday, when we learned that Canada's longtime Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, was resigning, well, you know the rest. And while Americans like us might have been surprised by this turn of events, Jesse was not.
It was clear that this was coming, and it was a little bit anxious not knowing exactly when.
Trudeau kept the press waiting in front of his residence in the Canadian cold for 20 minutes before he descended the steps and gave some remarks in English and French.
So I thought it might be fun for us to do this again.
This presser itself was a bit of a throwback. He delivered it from the same spot where he used to give Canada regular COVID updates.
I intend to resign as party leader, as Prime Minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process.
Trudeau said he was leaving because Parliament had become impossible to govern, which is not untrue, but also not the whole story. Trudeau's own shrinking cabinet had become a problem as well, and also a reflection of what some called his shambolic leadership. Last month, the Minister of Public Safety, who is also the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, also became the Minister of Finance. It's a lot of jobs for one guy.
This country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
In resigning, Trudeau said he was offering his Liberal Party a fresh start, even a chance to maintain control in Ottawa. Jesse is not so sure he agrees with that.
Based on the polling and comparing it to where polls have been in Canadian history, it just ain't going to happen. What is true is that with another leader, the Liberals may hang on to more seats. They may be able to save a little bit of their political capital.
Okay, so pardon the U.S. focusedness, but this is like a Joe Biden move? Like I'm ducking out to see what you can scramble together so you don't get totally creamed?
That's exactly it. And not dissimilar to Joe Biden, it's something that he probably did way too late for the good of his party and his colleagues.
You know, Justin Trudeau is a bit of a Nepo baby. His father, Pierre, was prime minister before him. And when Pierre resigned, he talked about taking a walk in the snow, which became this phrase. So Canadian. I love it. Did Justin say anything that poetic when he resigned?
No, and I was actually listening for that. I mean, that's a really good line that's become part of it's become shorthand for buddy, it's time to go take a walk in the snow. It's over. It's over. Everyone knows it but you. And I thought that he would understand that this is the moment where he could kind of enter his own new phrase into the lexicon. But, we kind of got the same Trudeau today. I'm speaking to you on the day that Trudeau announced his resignation, speaking to us as if we were kindergartners in the same breathless, patter and cadence that he's always patronized us with, and with I don't know, the same Trudeau we've always had.
I mean, you and your colleagues joked that people kept telling Justin Trudeau to take his own walk in the snow, but they didn't have to be dragged out and given a snowball in the face. Is that what happened here?
Oh yeah, there was no path.
Today on the show, Justin Trudeau finally takes his walk in the snow. But the storm is not over yet. I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today? Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. And that's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you can save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states and situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
Okay, let's rewind the clock for a second and talk about how we got to this place. Because I still remember when Justin Trudeau first burst onto the political scene back in 2015, because he was such a star. He branded himself as a feminist and an environmentalist. Vogue ranked him as one of 2015's top 10 convention-defying hotties. He's cute, too. So it's he had a lot going for him. Did you ever buy this hype?
I mean, being a jaded member of the press, even if I was ever seduced by it, I wouldn't admit to it now. But no, I was skeptical from the start. And
why?
Because I think that he benefited from the juxtaposition of himself with Trump, as if, look, Americans catapulted him to a level of celebrity. And, 90% plus of Canadian media consumption is American media. And there's nothing we like more than attention from the Americans. So sure, he had his own brand here in Canada, but once Vogue and GQ and all the magazines were all over him and he was being hailed as a celebrity, Canadians really liked this story. I mean, it's a story that began to be told by Pierre Trudeau.
Justin Trudeau's father. That's
right. The first Trudeau prime minister really modernized Canada's image, that it's not some sort of, backwater, northern boonies neighbor to America, but it's actually a more progressive version of America and a more liberal America. And his son really embodied that. He had policies and policy objectives that included reconciliation with Indigenous people, with very specific targets around things like as basic as access to clean drinking water, but well beyond that. Not long after, very, very ambitious expansion of immigration. I guess that would be one of the major Trudeau year initiatives was really opening the borders of Canada, where we need to replenish our tax base and our population, and he opened the doors in really widespread ways. And the timing of Trudeau, becoming prime minister as Trump was ascending, I think led a lot of American media to say, wow, look at what Canada has. They're so far ahead of us. They're so much more progressive than us. As a Canadian, I know that that's not how Trudeau came to power and not how Canada works. We kind of do what America does a little bit later. Trudeau was not our answer to Trump. Trudeau came up before Trump. Trudeau was our answer to Obama. They cut some other figures. These are young, attractive elites, and the Canadian version's a bit safer because he's the son of an elite. But everything about the rhetoric and the kind of hopeful, optimistic, smiling, left and progressive, but I think that there might be some people on the left who would question just how progressive or left these guys are. But they certainly looked the part. We were following what we saw America do with Obama, and that catapulted him to a level of celebrity that no Canadian prime minister has ever had.
But it did not take long for Trudeau's celebrity to start to wear thin for some voters, especially when controversies undercut his progressive image. There was a scandal in 2019 when Canadians learned the PM had helped defer the prosecution of a big company that was tight with the Liberal Party. Trudeau also ruffled feathers when he started losing female advisors after making a big show of appointing a gender-balanced cabinet when he first got to office. But the pandemic was when he really began to lose favor.
That's when the country started to turn on him in many ways. There was this scandal that full disclosure, I was involved in reporting, where a huge pandemic contract was awarded to a charity that was revealed by my news organization Canadaland to have paid members of his family for lucrative speaking contracts. And they were given this, $500 million thereabouts contract to disperse money to students in Canada, which arguably they were not well suited to. And as the press chipped away at this, they found all sorts of connections between his finance minister and this charity. And then the finance minister got thrown under the bus and had to go.
And then at the same time, he's shutting things down, right? And people didn't like that. So it becomes sort of a tangled mess of things to dislike.
Yes, but I'll say this in his defense. We had a longer shutdown than many countries, and we had our stats of how many people died are a lot more favorable. And some people would defend the prime minister saying that was the right thing to do. But if we're telling the story of how he fell out of favor with Canadians, that's a big chapter in the story. And that's when your listeners might remember this freedom convoy when the truckers shut down Ottawa.
I think that's the last time I talked to you. Yeah.
That's right. And that's when we saw a kind of a new strain to the anti-Trudeau feeling in Canada, where it became really hostile. And we saw these F. Trudeau flags going up and calls for him to be hanged, first impeached. It became a level of political vitriol that we were not used to seeing in Canada. This movement of the truckers and the people who were either anti-vaxxers or against the mandates became just so furiously angry. And, perhaps with some justification, because the types of Canadians who were not allowed to work were the types of Canadians who couldn't work from their laptops in a coffee shop. This did not affect everybody equally.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seemed to me like Justin Trudeau was trying to kind of surf through this. Like in 2021, he called an early election thinking he could win back a majority of government, and he was not right about that. So it's like he was trying to make his way through and sort of pull levers to maybe increase his power or at least stabilize things, but it wasn't quite working. Is that fair?
That's fair. I think it was a surprise to him when he came back from that election with really a minority that needed to be propped up through an alliance with the NDP, the New Democratic Party, which is sort of the further left party here in Canada. His fortunes have been falling for many years, and yet he's sort of always been able to kind of snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. And every time it looked like he was out, he'd figure out a way to cling to power. But, if you look at it over the long run, it's sort of he peaked in the first 2 years, and it's kind of been a downward trend ever since.
I want to talk about the last month or two, because it seems to me like what happened is Donald Trump was reelected in the United States. That was a blow because of all that it implied for Canada. And then things snowballed from there. So maybe let's talk about Trump's election and then this announcement of a 25% tariff and how Trudeau responded and how that impacted how Canadians viewed his leadership.
Sure. It became kind of a crisis level event once the idea of this 25% tariff entered the discourse. And, there's a big debate about how seriously we should take this. And I'm of a mind that we should look at what leaders do and not what they say. Because the last time, it's exactly what happened the last time when Trump first came to power and threatened these, incredibly punishing tariffs. And ultimately, it was possible for a deal to be reached. But the notion of a guy like Trump, who speaks the language of power and pretty much that's it, taking a prime minister like Justin Trudeau seriously, one who, first of all, tweaked Trump's ego when the Muslim ban was initiated. Trudeau said that those who are fleeing persecution are welcome in Canada, positioning himself as a progressive, open-armed antidote to this Trump xenophobia, was embarrassing for Trump. And the idea that, this incoming president who keeps such grudges over personal grievances and also is so keenly aware of where power lives would sit down with a prime minister like Trudeau, it just became really hard for Canadians to imagine that's putting us in a strong position.
And then in December, all of a sudden, Chrystia Freeland, Trudeau's deputy prime minister and finance minister, resigns. Can you just tell this story and why it was such a huge deal?
So the story is that throughout all of the ministers whose heads have rolled, Chrystia Freeland has remained fiercely loyal to Trudeau, even as he sidelined her. And there was a lot of talk that he was intentionally doing so that there would not be another alternative for his party.
Oh, so she couldn't compete with him.
That's right, because there was early talk that she could perhaps be the next prime minister, and that if ever the Liberals were to decide that Trudeau's popularity was too low, you've got Chrystia Freeland. And as soon as that talk started to become common, you didn't see her much anymore. So here she is as the finance minister and the deputy prime minister. And what we have since learned is that she had promised Canadians a mere $40 billion deficit in the fall budget statement that she was getting ready to announce.
And she was a little bit of a deficit hawk, right? She was like, that has to be the cap.
That's the cap. I mean, that's a big one for us to call it hawkish. But yeah, she knew what
it's still there. It's still a bit of deficit.
She staked her reputation on that number, basically. And then Trudeau comes forward with what a lot of people saw as a vote-buying campaign to reverse his tanking popularity numbers by giving Canadians, $250 each and a holiday from one of our sales taxes. And it's going to be her job to deliver this news that it's going to be a $60 billion deficit and not a $40 billion deficit. And oh, by the way, I'm shuffling you out as finance minister, which is a very, very big job. And it was a bizarre and hubristic move for Trudeau to make and a fatal strategic flaw, because he told her on a Friday, you are out as finance minister, but I'm not getting rid of you. You're still going to be deputy prime minister. I'm moving you to another job, but I still want you to deliver the news that it's going to be a $60 billion deficit and not a $40 billion deficit.
Ouch.
And what he expected from her, why would she eat what was served there? I guess he could just look back on the decade of loyalty and say, well, she'll do what she's told. She did not do what she was told.
What'd she do instead?
She quit. And she did not quit the party, which was very telling. She said, I am resigning from your cabinet, but I intend to run for my seat. And what that signaled to a lot of people is that she is breaking ties with Trudeau and might be running for leadership.
So did Chrystia Freeland seal Trudeau's fate?
It was going to happen anyhow, but yeah, she had the dagger. That was the death blow, I think.
Hours after Justin Trudeau announced his resignation, Donald Trump posted that if Canada simply agreed to become the 51st state, he'd happily reconsider those enormous tariffs. Yes, really. After the break, since a North American merger is not likely, what happens now?
Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Shop Blinds.com right now and get up to 40% off select styles. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Bored with your boring cardio? Stop pedaling that snooze cycle to Nowheresville and try some cardio that's actually fun. Supernatural Fitness, available on MetaQuest. Isn't that right, Jane Fonda?
Cardio will never be boring again.
Sweat to the beat of thousands of chart-topping songs inside stunning virtual landscapes.
Bet your stationary bike can't do that.
Visit GetSupernatural.com and join the next fitness revolution. Supernatural VR Fitness, only on MetaQuest. Rated Teen for Teen.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The new year brings new health goals and wealth goals. Protecting your identity is an important step. LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, LifeLock's restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Resolve to make identity health and wealth part of your New Year's goals with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
So let's talk about what happens now. Justin Trudeau says he's planning to stay on as prime minister until the Liberal Party chooses a new leader, whoever that will be. He's shut down Parliament until March 24th to do it. So how's all this going to work?
I don't know. This is really, really bad because your new president is coming into office. He says he's going to do this very quickly. And our government is like, we hit pause so that the Liberals can find a new leader who will almost certainly lose anyhow.
Yeah, I mean, if Trump does slap double-digit tariffs on imports from Canada, who's going to talk to him about that?
I don't know. I mean, I honestly, I mean, it would still be, Trudeau would still be our prime minister when Trump is sworn in later this month. And then whenever Trump decides to move ahead with these tariffs, that's our prime minister. So I guess that's where the negotiate. I don't know. Like I say, we're in a really hazy territory. Trudeau resigned saying he was doing this for the best interests of Canadians so we could have a real choice. But it's really hard to build a cogent or credible narrative that this is in our best interests. It seems inevitable based on the polling that the Conservatives are going to form government in Canada sooner or later. And regardless of whether or not you support them, if you accept that reality, the question becomes, are we in a better position for that to happen sooner or later? And it seems obvious to me that having this lengthy recess from a functioning parliament followed by a general election puts us at a big disadvantage. It's like we're in uncharted territory here.
Yeah, I mean, the election has to be held before October 20th, but I assume someone could call snap elections here and just be like, okay, let's get this over with. Who's in charge?
Yeah, it will almost certainly occur before next October. But the way things are looking right now, Parliament is prorogued, which is paused until the end of March. And then there's going to be a general. So, we don't know exactly how soon after that there'll be a general or how quickly that campaign will take. But that does put us 3, 4, 5 months away from having a new government. And the only thing that could change this and speed the process up, if Canadians got really furiously angry about this and called their members of parliament up and demanded that something happen sooner, but we're not very good at getting angry.
I was going to say, that's not the Canadian style.
That's it. So it's hard to imagine a level of civic unrest. I've never seen anything like that before in Canada. So again, it just leaves us in this hazy mystery territory where it's and this uncertainty itself is terrible for our economy. One thing that Canada has benefited from over the years is this notion that it is a very stable place to park your money. It's a very stable place to invest. And that's another thing that is getting eroded right now.
I mean, you said back in March, way before all of this, you did a podcast. You were basically like, Trudeau's era is over. We all need to get used to the fact that this is the Conservative Party's Canada right now. The leader is this guy, Pierre Poilievre. And you basically said he's already our next prime minister. Deal with it, people. Do you stand by that now? Is there any way the Liberals salvage this for themselves?
Oh, I felt way shakier saying that then than now. Yeah, it's a lock. It's a lock. The reality has been clear for a long time. And it's a lot of the same people who supported Justin Trudeau who now detest him in a way that I've never seen Canadians detest any politician, let alone their prime minister. A lot of Canadians who supported Justin Trudeau, who were part of, the modern Trudeau mania, are now fervent supporters of Pierre Poilievre.
Why?
Because he effectively positioned himself as the answer to Trudeau. The two Conservative leaders who lost to Trudeau seem like smiley, fit, and hip guys. They tried to out-Trudeau. And Poilievre went the other way. First of all, he came to power during the Freedom Convoy by doing what the fairly staid and cautious Canadian Conservatives were not willing to do, which was embrace these anti-vax, largely right-wing truckers. They were being vilified and demonized for essentially occupying downtown Ottawa. They staged this kind of historic protest, which was very obstreperous and, in Canada, breaking the peace is a real capital crime. And leaning on their horns and making life unpleasant for the residents of Ottawa, these were the enemies of polite society in Canada. And the fact that Pierre Poilievre embraced them was shocking and disqualifying to many people. It did not disqualify him from Conservative leadership. It's what gave him the Conservative leadership. And he has since been playing out of a handbook that I think he's cribbed some notes from Trump.
So what did Poilievre say about how he wants to lead?
He has said more about how Trudeau has broken Canada than he has said about how he wants to lead.
Well, that's a classic. Just point at the other guy and say, that's bad.
That's right. And, that's sort of what you do when you're running against an incumbent. But he's done it on a scale that we haven't seen before. He has just applied sharp pressure consistently that Trudeau has betrayed Canada, has broken Canada, has ruined Canada. And how is he exactly going to fix it? A lot of people would debate that there's a lot more criticism in Poilievre's platform than there are practical solutions.
Trudeau's time in office started with so much hope. He was presented, as we said, as this kind of feminist, advocate, progressive guy. I don't think that was borne out. But what do you think his legacy is going to be?
I think that, like any Canadian prime minister who goes out under a cloud of failure and scandal, he will quickly rehabilitate his legacy. This is still like a British hangover as a colonial country. We still take care of our establishment here. I'm not worried about Justin Trudeau. I'm sure that the Trudeau Foundation and his various endeavors, he'll be just fine. What should his legacy be? It's really hard to say much good about it. I think that he has things he can boast about in terms of how we performed in terms of saving lives during the pandemic. And I think he'll cite, and his supporters will cite, the fact that medical care in Canada was extended to a very limited degree to dental care. But when you look at what he did to his own progressive agenda, to the things that he cared most about, reconciliation with Indigenous people, that's a very lofty thing to say. How about clean drinking water for Indigenous people? He hasn't solved that. He made ridiculous promises about planting 2 billion trees. That, of course, didn't happen. He promised electoral reform. It was one of the first promises he broke. I think his true legacy will be that the soft and cuddly and progressive and smiling idea of Canada that he embodied is done. I can't imagine anybody running on that as Captain Canada at this moment. That notion is so tarnished, and maybe that's a positive legacy because that was always a bit of a myth, and maybe we need to grow up and get past that.
Jesse, I'm so grateful for your time. Thanks for coming on the show. Whenever you do, it's just the best. Thanks.
It's been my pleasure.
Jesse Brown is the editor and publisher of the fantastic Canadaland. And that's the show. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Madeline Ducharme, and Anna Phillips. We are led by Alicia Montgomery. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Go track me down on Blue Sky if you'd like. I'm at Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. Catch you back here next time.